In the words of Jim Rohn, there's only a few fundamentals to anything, and if you can master the fundamentals, you can be on your way, well on your way, to becoming an expert at pretty much anything. And what's really cool is I like to just go beyond the words of Jim Rohn and think about forms of life, right? And what I love to do is look at forms of life that have great sustainability, and then whatever practices I'm going to put into my life, my hobbies, my family life, or business, I like to adopt those, and you can do the same. So where do we begin? I'm going back about 30 years in the words of Dr. Gary Emberger, who was a botany teacher of mine when I was taking biology and chemistry at Messiah University. Gary Emberger says, hey, look, there's only one form of life that has no appointment date for death because of age. And I'm like, what? Yeah, it can grow as long as it wants and is to be as old as it can and not have death, unless there's a catastrophe or outside things, but not from age. It won't die from aging. And I thought that was interesting. Oftentimes, a business, because it's just sown its oats in its age, take Sears and Roebuck, for example, take Smith and Corona, many businesses that no longer exist, AMC Motors, whatever it may be, and they did last for their time being. What could you do if you could really take a look at the form of life that has no termination date based on age? Well, I thought, what if I could plug in the concept of business, being a father, a husband, or plugging in what it means to be someone, a servant of God, whatever part of my life I can, and model this form of life with just the basic fundamentals of how it operates. So, Dr. Emberger said, the only form of life that has no termination date based on its age is a tree. I thought, how phenomenal is that? Now, what fundamentals does a tree function from? Now, we know it has a lot of work that it does with the xylem and phloem, branches and leaves, clearing up the carbon dioxide, and certainly giving off O2. That's pretty powerful, but what does it really do? What is the basic fundamental of it? And I thought this was so amazing. And here's what I learned. This is 30 plus years ago. I was told by Dr. Emberger that, you know what, one of the things you want to do in this branch of, I think I was taking 400 level biology at the time, and he was explaining that a tree is very obedient. And a tree has this fundamental that it practices under all circumstances, and that is, it must develop. It must develop. That way it can continue to do what it was put here for, grow and have all these other functions. But the basic fundamental of a tree is it's going to develop, and if it cannot develop, it will not live. It's not going to die from age, it's going to die from, of course, malnutrition, right? So here is the basic fundamental. If you walk through the jungle or the forest or something, you're going to notice that there are trees, and what you cannot see is, through their xylem, they're going to pull up over 100 gallons of nutrients per day, a mature tree. And if it cannot do that, it begins to weaken and die. You'll see the branches start to die off and other things. What they call the apical meristem will become damaged. It's interesting to absorb the right amount of sunlight and also have the ability to grow branches and have the phloem, which is the bark you see around the tree, begin to every year rewrap itself. All of these things are required from the one fundamental of development. You should note that if you truly want to grow, you can't entertain yourself to the top, because you, like a tree, will become malnutrition and you'll slowly die off. I mentioned in a video a few days ago about George Fraser saying when more is going on outside of you than inside of you, the end is near. Well, here's a great example of that. If a tree has more going outside looking good with its leaves and growing fruit and so forth, that's just external. What's going on inside? So here's what I decided to do. This is many, many, many years ago, is no matter what, at the end of any month, at the end of any day, I insist upon growth. Now, I can't take in hundreds of gallons of nutrients, but I can take in words and information and how-to instructions on things that I don't know. That's vital. You can do this for your business. Now, if you're ever going to dive into things like artificial intelligence, robotics, or things like that, get away from it if you're not going to grow. Yes, you will find that you're outnumbered, outpaced, and it's going to reflect you, expose you, as I mentioned in other videos, and most of all, it's going to multiply more of what you are and magnify that to the world that you're inadequate. So what do? You insist on growth. Develop, develop, develop. One of the things we talk about in Automation Academy is not just done for you. Done for you is dangerous. If you don't learn to do anything and everything's done for you, you have just set yourself up for the ultimate replacement and insignificance in life that you could ever have. So what can you do about it? Plug in. Insist on development every day. For me, if it's not audible, I make sure that I read my Bible. I read things every day. I must grow and mature. I'm certainly going to learn more about a topic that is of interest to me, such as AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Bard, Midjourney, all of the different AI technology, I don't want to just sit and say, well, that's cool, I have that. You can put yourself in an entirely different stratosphere if you can just develop a little bit every day. So how do you do this? Dwayne, I don't know. How do I have time? Well, if you're too busy to do what you ought to do, then you're in fact too busy. So here's what you can do. You can step up to the plate and find a way to insist, like the tree does. The tree says, I insist. And if I do not get the proper sunlight helps me to absorb with a vacuum all those nutrients from the ground. If I don't get it, I'm going to find it. So oftentimes you'll note that a tree will have a canopy grow over top of it and block it from getting sun. And what do you see? You'll see a tree that's bent over and going sideways in the forest. Sometimes you might think that all of those trees are the result of lightning striking and it falling. No. A tree insists on its development and growth, and it can't do it without some basic fundamentals, like getting its nutrients. But it can't get that so well without the sunlight. So what does it do? It decides to start bending. It's so obedient, it's going to do what it was put here for, and it's going to go sideways until it sees an opening, and then it'll start to go up. Have you remember walking on a hike and noticed a tree was going sideways and then it was bending going up, and you thought it was just from being struck by lightning? What you want to find is if your schedule's too busy, you want to bend like the tree and ensure you can get your nutrition. And how you do that? Shut your television off. Take the earphones out of your ear and begin to ensure that you develop every day. In the first law of thermodynamics, it says nothing can be created or destroyed. And I think a lot of people have heard that throughout life. The other part is the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, and things are at disorder in its original state until we work to get it back in order. Well, your schedule is like that. There are things you have to remove and put in place. And one of the things I think makes it easier for me, I live by a journal. I love to make sure whatever I'm going to do the next day, I don't wake up and figure it out that day. I get myself in order. I know what's coming the next day. And certainly, some of the things I decide what to do comes from my new development, but if I'm not developing, I'm going to find myself like a lot of you, or I'm doing the same thing every day. So how do you get through all this stuff? Just look, do yourself a favor. As John Maxwell says, hey, your daily dues will determine what you do. And if you can do things different daily, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, everything's going to be different for you, and you deserve that. So dive in. And certainly, if you're not a member of Automation Academy, get over there so you can start automating the parts of your life that you don't need to make decisions about every day. How are you going to have time to make the decisions about the things you should if you're constantly making decisions about, okay, what am I going to do today? Where do I start? You're going to get past that. So again, this is Dwayne Golden. We look forward to talking to you very soon. So keep up the good work, progress, and develop. Take care.